Have you ever faced death for standing up for what you believe in? How about being thrown into a lion's den? Hello and welcome to episode 11 in our series Step into His Presence. In a previous presentation, we talked about when to fast. This week we will discuss how to have a successful fast by looking at a righteous man named Daniel. Yes, the Daniel from the book of Daniel, who was thrown to the lions for supper. My name is Stephanie Wright, and this episode is entitled The Night the Lions Fasted, or In the Lion's Den with Daniel. Let's learn how to fast and pray successfully. Before we get started, if you have not already listened to episode 3 of this series, Nothing is Impossible with God, please do so. It provides scriptures, some basic foundational principles, contemporary examples of fasting with prayer, and caveats on how to fast. Today we are going to focus on Daniel from the Old Testament book of Daniel and his success through prayer and fasting. We are not going to talk a lot about the type of food Daniel ate in Daniel 1 verse 12 and 10 verse 23 because there is plenty of information on the internet about what is known as the Daniel fast. What we will emphasize in today's presentation is Daniel's obedience and dedication to God when it comes to fasting and prayer. In addition to Daniel, chapters 1 and 10, Chapter 9, verse 3, specifically references Daniel's fasting, but does not mention any food or sustenance. We can, therefore, conclude this was not a partial fast like chapters 1 and 10, but a complete fast of no food and water, or at least no food. In any event, Daniel's fasting resulted in answered prayers in all 3 of the aforementioned chapters. But why were Daniel's fasts successful? We will briefly point to 3 reasons for Daniel's success: passion, persistence, and patience. Daniel was passionate about his love of God. Daniel 9:23 and 10:12 say he was a man greatly beloved. He was greatly beloved of God because he greatly loved God. He passionately loved the Lord. His love for God throughout his service under 4 kings was continuous: Nebuchadnezzar, Belshazzar, Darius, and Cyrus. Daniel was between 17 and 20 years old when he was taken into captivity under King Nebuchadnezzar, and he was believed to be around 85 years of age when he died. This was a long time by any standard to remain faithful. But when you love God the way Daniel loved God, time did not matter. This was one of the keys to Daniel's successful fast, which resulted in answered prayer. So what is your passion level for God when it comes to fasting and prayer? Let's explore how we know Daniel loved God. In addition to his passion for God, Daniel was also persistent in his prayer and fasting. Persistent unto death. Let's revisit one of the most popular accounts in the book of Daniel. Daniel in the lion's den, chapter 6. We all know how Daniel was framed or set up by a group of jealous men who convinced King Darius to sign a proclamation that said no one could petition anyone other than the king for anything, or they would be put to death. Well, they all knew Daniel prayed daily and openly, but even though Daniel knew the king had signed the edict, Daniel 6:10 says, "Now, when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went into his house, and his windows being open in his chamber toward Jerusalem, he kneeled upon his knees 3 times a day and prayed, and gave thanks before his God as he did aforetime." Daniel was not swayed by the edict, even though it meant losing his life. No doubt Daniel was fasting during this time because that was his way of handling challenges to his dedication to God. For example, in Daniel chapter 1, when Daniel was about 17 years old, he and the other Hebrew boys went on a partial fast of vegetables and water instead of defiling themselves with the king's meat and drinking the king's wine. They were stronger than the other children at the end of 10 days. Daniel chapter 1, verses 8 through 15. So let's fast forward to when Daniel was about 80 or so years old and was sentenced to be thrown to the lions for praying. But we know the rest of the story. God sent an angel to shut the lions' mouths. Daniel 6, verse 22. And the next morning Daniel was brought up out of the lion's den, and his enemies, along with their families, were fed to the lions. Daniel 6, verse 24. Persistence is defined as continuing firmly or obstinately in a course of action in spite of difficulty or opposition. That defines Daniel perfectly. He prayed and fasted persistently, consistently 3 times a day, and unashamed, leaving the window open for the world to see in the face of opposition. Some of us are ashamed to pray over our food in public when we go out to dinner. So, of course, God heard and answered Daniel's prayers because he honored Daniel's persistence in fasting and prayer. What about you? What is your persistence level for fasting and prayer? Finally, Daniel was patient. Was he ever patient? In chapter 10, we read that he fasted for 21 days until he finally got an answer to his prayers concerning the Jewish nation and the end of their bondage. He was told that his prayer was heard the very first day he prayed, but was held up by an evil force called the Prince of Persia. It took an archangel, Michael, to finally come and contend with this evil force for the answer to Daniel's prayer to manifest. Daniel chapter 10, verse 23. Some speculate that if Daniel had stopped fasting on day 20, he might not have gotten his answer. Whether or not this is true, I do know that Daniel was patient and stayed with his fast until the answer was manifested. That is the kind of patience we need when we are fasting. Daniel's patience and will to persevere was a real test, especially because in the previous chapter 9, the angel Gabriel came and answered to his prayer immediately after he prayed. Daniel 9, verse 18 to 21. Thus, we learn to be patient and not compare one fast to another. Love of God, persistence, and patience, among other things, will result in a successful fast and answered prayer. And of course, if you need help in any of these areas, you know the answer, right? Jesus said, "The Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he will teach you all things and remind you of all that I have said." John chapter 14, verse 26. Just ask the Holy Spirit to help you. Thank you for joining us today. Now, let's listen to Apostle Charles as he gives us details on how you may contact us and listen to past episodes.
If you want to contact us or comment on this podcast, please visit our website at cgmissions.com/podcast, where all episodes are available by category and series format. This is Apostle Charles. Until next time, God bless you.
Charles George Missions is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Donations are tax deductible. Donations may be made through our website, cgmissions.com.